Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Am Not Okay with Day. I am your host, Day, and today we have a special guest on the podcast. We have Trevor Talks joining us. Trevor is a mental health and faith-based activist. He's the owner of Transparent Media Company and Fear is a Liar Company clothing brand. He is also, most importantly, a man of God. In this episode, we get to talking about his mental health experiences with anxiety, depression, and how he was able to get through it. It's a really important conversation. We especially talk about a lot of the stigmas with mental health among our church. So I think it's really important. I'm very excited for you guys to hear it. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Here is Trevor. Trevor, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy that you could join us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm so glad to be here, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Yes, it's an honor to have you. I'm very excited for everyone to hear the conversation that we're going to have today. Well, Trevor, we're just going to dive right in. So, I gave everybody a little bit of an introduction on you and kind of what you're doing. But I just wanted to start with you from the beginning. Just kind of give us your personal introduction of yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, kind of where you started. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Trevor. I am from Social Circle, Georgia, which is like a very, very tiny town, about an hour east of Atlanta. And I'm just a good old country boy with a little bit of a platform, and God's just taught me so much in my life, and I'm just able to share that with people all over the world through my podcast, Trevor Talks, personal brand, and then being able to help other people launch their messages into the world as well now. So God's just given me a voice and a platform and a gift of vulnerability, and just being able to open up about really hard topics that you don't hear a lot of guys talking about, being vulnerability, mental health, suicidal ideation, all of the above. I'm just a kid spreading a message. So 23 years old, small town in Georgia, just like anybody else. Praise God that I'm here. And yeah, it's just a very, very, very simplistic lifestyle for me, just like anybody else. Nothing more important than anybody else, nothing any more special. We all have a story, and God's just given me a voice to be able to shout it from the rooftops.
I love that. So you kind of mentioned the mental health thing, and that's definitely something that I talked about in the beginning as well. And I kind of just want to dive into your experience with mental health and kind of what that's been like and where you're at now.
Yeah, so I like to start my story around my senior year of high school, when I really first noticed having a panic attack as a pre-adult. I
Mhm.
remember, like, through therapy and everything, learning that when I was like 5, 6 years old, like when my room was downstairs and my parents was upstairs, and I would like have these phobias of like somebody breaking in or being shot in a school
Mm.
shooting or things like that, and it would freak me out, and I'd start having panic attacks, but I didn't know what those were until I went through
Yeah.
therapy as a an 18-year-old. So it started when I was a kid, and then it came back to the surface my senior year of high school when I was touring promoting an event. And I remember having my first panic attack at in Birmingham, Alabama, at Church of the Highlands, and I walked around the building trying to make myself puke outside because I thought that I was sick, and just trying to
Mm.
get that out. And it wasn't coming out, and it wasn't going away. So I asked the EMTs if they had any ibuprofen or anything, and they're like, "Hey, we can't give it to you. You're underage." And I'm like, "Oh, like
Mhm.
whatever." So I had a panic attack. I was supposed to speak at Shorter University the next day. Ended up calling out, and I had a lot planned for that year, and it all got derailed. Senior year of high school,
Wow.
I was class president. Had to get the commencement speech at graduation. Did that. Was able to pull that off.
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't get therapy until over 2 years after I graduated. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it was 2.5 or 3 years, somewhere in there, before I received help. But um, through learning and finding people to support me and having a community that God blessed me with to support me along that journey, I'm able to live and overcome daily and pursue my calling.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were having panic attacks when you were younger, like 5, 6, and you didn't really know what that was.
Yeah.
What can you remember specifically, like when you were at that age feeling, and like, were your parents aware of this? What was that like?
I feel like, at the time they were just like, "Oh, he's had a bad dream," just like any
Mhm.
normal parents were. Like they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't panic attack, mental health. None of that was talked about at that point.
Right.
So I was having mental health issues as a child. It just wasn't known.
Mhm.
And I remember like I would think I was sick or something. I'd run upstairs and I'd just be like hyperventilating, and my mom's like, "Just calm down, calm down." And it's like, "Oh, he's crazy." Like that was just something I experienced as a child, and I had shunned it down to my
Yeah.
core, like, and just compressed it down. Didn't even remember it until I went through therapy.
Mhm.
So that's something through EDMR therapy I was able to pull back up to the surface and address and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, like that's something you experienced, dude. So it's not just something that popped up your senior year. It's something
Right.
you've experienced your whole life. You just didn't know what it was or how to address it.
So when we talk about therapy, what is something like how did that come to be? Because I know the act of seeking, first of all, deciding, okay, I have a problem, and then deciding, let me go ahead and get
That's a
help for
big step
this.
on its
It's
own. Huge step.
huge.
Yeah.
There's so many steps. So walk me through your steps. Like when did you realize, okay, this is a serious problem? And then how long from that point on did it take you to say, I need to get help? And then how long from then did it take you to actually get the help?
Yeah, so, to kinda set that story up, I've only dated one girl in my life, and,
Mm-hmm.
I was dating her at that time, and she's like, "You should probably go to therapy and get that checked out." So,
Mm-hmm.
the love of a lady to get me in the therapist chair, but, to each their own, everybody has a different story with it.
Yeah.
And that's like really what happened for me. Like I trusted her, like she didn't think I was crazy. So just having like it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be a spouse or someone you're dating, but having someone around you, like if they recommend it, just know that they have pure intentions with it. So
Mm.
it took a few times of me having that conversation with her.
Right.
And full credit to her, like amazing girl. Didn't end on bad terms. It just wasn't the
Mhm.
situation God had planned. And she's encouraged me to go through it. And I hid it from my parents and everyone when I was going through it because I
Wow.
thought
Yeah.
like, they're going to think I'm crazy, to the point where I worked for AT&T at the time. I was going before work one day and my dad was driving behind me and I like took a different turn to where he didn't see me go to the
Mhm.
like that building.
Yeah. Wow. So when did your parents find out, or when did you tell them?
After the fact. So I would say they heard a few days before the world heard. Because
Mm.
I was like, I better tell
Wow.
them before, Facebook is where I really started to gain traction for Trevor Talks and sharing about
Right.
mental health and videos and stuff. So I was like, well, if I'm going to share it with them, I don't want them to figure out through Facebook. So,
Right.
um,
Mhm.
they heard just about maybe a week before everyone else did.
That's awesome. I think the point you brought up about, your past girlfriend and just having people around you that are supportive of your mental health and want to help you is so, so important. Were you defensive at all, like when she brought that up? Because I know sometimes like that's hard if
Mhm.
anyone tells you, hey, you need to get help. Was that something that was difficult for you to like digest? Or were you just like, I trust this person. She knows me well. I know she cares about me. And so I know this is
Mhm.
not coming from like an ill will place or anything.
Yeah. Like, just mind you, at that time, I was not the same. Like, I was obviously the same person, but mentally,
Mm,
I was like, I'm a huge fan of music. Like I had toured and done everything, and I thought that period was over. So I was kind of mourning that, right? Because that was my
mm,
calling. I was locking it away. It was like I was taking some
yeah.
dirt and burying it with a shovel, one piece at a time, just on a coffin of like, I'm never going to do this again. My best life
Mhm,
is behind me, etc. So
mm,
once she brought the idea up, I was instantly intrigued because at that time, mind you, I was working for AT&T, unhealthily in love with my job, um, like winning accolades, trips to Cancun, number one in the Southeast
wow.
through the company. And I wasn't fulfilled. I bought a house at 19, wasn't satisfied, got a new car, did everything, looked bougie on the outside, but inside it was a rotting
Mhm,
house.
yeah.
So I don't quite believe at any point was I aggressive about it. Like, no, I don't need to do that. Of
Mhm,
course, I was like, oh, isn't that for crazy people? And that
yeah.
was a conversation we definitely had. But I'd
Right.
heard so much about therapy and I was open to give it a shot. I remember I woke up one day, I was like, I got to do something to change this. And I called
Mhm,
all the like therapy offices around, and none of them would answer. All the like
Oh my
phones were
goodness.
unhooked, and I was like, "Well, I'm doing something today," so I went and got a tattoo, like every normal person does, to kind of signify like that we're gonna take it this step further. I got Second Kings
Right.
2:9 tattooed on me, which talks about a double portion of God's Spirit being placed on Elisha from Elijah before Elijah was sent up to heaven in chariot of flames.
Yeah.
So go look up Second Kings 2:9 if you're intrigued by that story, even if you're not a Christian. It's just very inspiring
Hmm.
that you can just pursue a double portion of, for me, God's Spirit. But in anything you do, why not go after double portion? Why not exceed expectations that you may have for yourself when
Yeah.
they're available readily? So all that to say, I had my faith. I had aspects of like, what would God want me to do? But
Hmm.
even for people that may not be believers, like the story of Jesus is just super inspiring to me. If you want to look at him as the Son of God, or if you just want to see what some of the parables have entail for you, they're very inspiring, I think. And they were a key cornerstone for me. And I walked through it, I believe, with God and through his guidance, and was like, I'm never going to be able to be on the like same path as I was. And then 2 months later, after completing therapy, I was on stage in front of 10,000 people in Quincy, California, all the
Wow.
way across the country, with the biggest music artists, like a huge Christian festival. So that's what God can do. Like I'm from a
Yeah.
tiny town. There were more people in that crowd than in my whole town by three
Wow.
times. So, God can do that if
Yeah.
you take that simple step and say yes, and just go through the motions, figure it out, and realize that you're not alone. Number one, I'm not alone. Tell yourself,
Hmm.
quantum journal, think about it, tell yourself, look in the mirror, have a conversation with yourself. I'm not alone in this. I'm not anxious. I'm not depressed. I'm just experiencing these things. You don't own them. It's not my
Mm.
anxiety. It's not my depression. I do not own them. And it's not a How to Train Your Dragon scenario. Like, I understand it's just like a Disney or Pixar movie, whatever. But training your dragons isn't how you
Yeah.
should think of your mental health. You're not living with a roommate. It's just something you're experiencing right now, and you got to learn how to kick it to the curb daily. It's like um, a drug, someone addicted to drugs and their drug dealer. You just have to keep pushing it off, and they may not leave you alone right then and there. Oh, you just go back to your bed. You'll be more comfortable there, and hide under your covers, and go take a hot shower and stay comfortable. But according to the Gospels and my like my thoughts on them, is like, okay, I'm encouraged to not be comfortable. Not that
Mm.
comfortability is a bad thing, but not all the time. Like, let's get out
Right.
there, and life gets a little boring when you just go through the motions like you're supposed to, especially chasing rat races like 9 to 5 jobs, and
Yeah.
finding an hourly rate like your pay being your
Hmm.
identity. It's not at all. At
Mm.
all. Your life is priceless. There's this one lyric. I don't know what the song or band is, like you'd trade your heart if it were made of gold. Like
Wow.
monetary value,
Yeah.
finances, all that stuff, it could become an idol. So that ties into mental health as well, a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation. But I feel like it's
Yes.
valuable for this conversation, just so like those are the things I've went through, and having financial security and health insurance, to like starting a business, not having health insurance and figuring everything out. Like
Hmm.
um I had it pretty good financially, and now like being a business owner and having people depending on my agency success to feed their families, it's like, like I didn't see this for me, being a business
Yeah.
owner and everything relying on you. There's stress and anxiety that can come with
Right. It's a
that.
lot of
But
pressure.
yeah, but God's helped me realize that there are bigger fish to fry than overthinking, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. So,
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned that you were touring. You were like a musician touring at the time.
speaker,
Oh,
like
you
running
were
my mouth.
speaking.
Yeah, speaking,
So how
chasing
did you get into
evangelism.
that?
I've always loved to run my mouth. Like, it's called Trevor Talks because I don't shut up. Like, I just don't. Like, Trevor Talks, that's literally a verb. That's the noun, like the name of the show. I just run my mouth. It's
Right.
nothing more than that. I get on and ask people questions that I'm genuinely intrigued to know. Like, I map out, like I just got done interviewing for my show. Like, I'll have it on a iPad here, like things to remind me of,
Yeah.
but I never go like word for word down
Yeah.
it or anything like that. I really just get the intro and make sure I get all the accolades or things to
Mhm.
highlight,
Mhm.
book titles, podcast titles, whatever we're talking about. Like I'll have those notes, but I just let the conversation take everything away and just let it lead, let God
Yeah.
lead, let the spirit lead. I don't get lost in my own sauce. And just praise God for new mercies and grace and just the ability to do this and not to be too preachy or anything. I'm mindful.
Yeah.
I understand not everybody's going to want to hear that. And I don't want to sway anybody away from a mental health conversation. But that's just real for me and I'm passionate about it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a mental health and faith-based podcast.
Yeah.
We talk about faith a lot here too.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. You were talking about, kind of having all the things looking really good on the outside and suffering on the inside. And I think that is the basis of my podcast because I feel like I lived a very similar life where,
Hmm.
I had the house and the husband and the career and everything. And I felt like I was on cloud nine, but really on the inside,
Mm.
it wasn't. And so then when that all came to a head and I literally lost all of those things, I
Hmm.
had to kind of like come to terms with the fact that we're not okay. Right.
Yeah.
What was that process for you like? Like, what was, though you said the panic attack, was that like the moment when you were like, okay, like we have to do something? What was that process for you like? Like, really coming to terms with the fact that you are not okay?
Yeah. It took over 2 years for me to even say I'm not okay. Number one.
Mm,
Number two, like when that panic attack happened, like I said, I was going to speak at a university and stayed
hmm.
away the next day. Canceled that, went home, didn't get out of bed for a week, one
Wow.
whole week. Missed school. Like I went from being able to, like, I was super extroverted and always being
Mhm.
gone from school, interning with that organization. And I even tried to get out of doing a class presentation in front of 20 people for a literature class. And I've always loved
Wow.
writing and literature. And, um, I from beginning to end, like front to back, everything, like I just had anxiety about it. I didn't want to go
Mhm.
to restaurants. I didn't want to go to outings. We had the whole senior class over to our house for a party. I didn't go outside. I just didn't want to be a part of any of it. It stole
Yeah.
my joy. It literally stole my joy. And now I know that was a choice that I indirectly made because I wasn't educated. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people
Mhm.
realize a little bit earlier than I did because not that I regret anything, but there's more to life than just embracing your um, quote unquote flaws, things that you struggle with, the roadblocks in
Mhm.
life. They're not meant to. It's exactly that. It's a roadblock. Like when you go to Kroger and they have the little things to slow you down, the humps in the
Mhm.
road. That's all anxiety and depression are. You could still go. You just have to go at a little bit slower pace and realize, like, okay, what are some things I can do to help take care of my body and help take care of my
Mhm.
mental health? And when I'm having panic attacks, it feels like I'm being choked, like right here in my Adam's apple. Like I just,
Mm.
if you press your thumb down in your neck, like right there
Mhm.
where it hits your chest, you start to feel pressure there. That's exactly what
Mhm.
I feel. And if you were to do it right now, I guarantee you start gagging. Like if you do it hard enough, you
Mm.
just feel like you start to gag. It closes your throat. It's hard to breathe.
Yeah.
So it's learning that like therapy, medication, and Jesus, like they can all work hand in hand.
Right.
And there's nothing terribly wrong with you. Like it's not worth ending your life. There's always a silver lining. There's always something to live for.
Mhm. Mhm. Let's talk about the stigma because I think that, especially in the church, there's a stigma of mental health. And you kind of brought that up a second ago about, meds in church and God and mental health. It all kind of goes in. Did you have an issue in the beginning with like dealing with some stigmas with mental health?
Oh yeah, of course. Like I didn't even tell my parents I was in therapy.
Yeah.
So like little things like that. I told some people at work and
Mm.
mostly the ladies at work because guys still oh he's a emotional wreck.
Mm.
Um, but I told very select people.
Yeah. And then when was the moment that you felt comfortable like, no, this is what it is? What was that turning point for you?
It was completing EDMR therapy and realizing that my issues aren't my identity and that I can get past them and I can help people with my words. And when I realized I was going to get back into speaking, I was
Mhm.
like, there's nothing I'm more passionate about right now than helping people overcome that. So I had to realize for myself, like,
Yeah.
Trevor, you're going to get back into speaking and you're trying to hide this anxiety thing right now, but this is going to be your life's message. So you better get used to it. And
Mm,
it took me a while, but I embrace it. And now I'm an open book.
I love that. When you like, how is that now with talking to your male peers, and like, has that changed the dynamics of some of your relationships with your male friends?
I would say I'm more mindful on the way I joke.
Mm,
So like even guys like I've gotten body shamed my whole life for being so
really?
tiny, like, and I can't gain weight. Like, mind you, like I broke 2 national records in powerlifting, but I was still a
Wow.
tiny guy. So I did all that trying to gain weight to where people would shut up with saying I look like anorexic or things that are just
Mm,
super mean, especially like for guys. Like I feel like for some reason it's reversed. Like guys don't want to be skinny and girls want to be skinny.
yeah.
And like I I can't help, like I can't build muscle like that or gain
Right.
weight. Genetically, it's just not going to work for me. So I'm mindful on what I joke around with guys about, like,
Mm,
oh, you're fat or you're too skinny or you're this. You got a big head, like there's a time and a place for stuff like that. And if
mm-hmm.
it's all fun and games, you have to make sure it's being received that way. Cause some guys go home and like self-inflict pain on themselves because these words are
Yeah.
hurting so much. And there's an epidemic with people cutting their wrists, cutting their sides to where like it's cut like in their belt line. I know in high school it was a whole lot more common than you would ever think, just because I knew of girls that would like actually cut their sides during the winter and then like find places like to where they could still wear bathing suits and like
Wow.
hide their cuts because they were self-inflicting pain on themselves, abusing alcohol, abusing drugs. These are all like issues that nobody wants to talk about, but let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about the high schooler that goes home and their parents aren't paying them any attention. They leave them at home in these big houses and it looks like on the outside they have it all together, but they're drinking all their parents' booze, busting the bottle and slicing the wrist open at night and acting like they have it all together during the day. Let's talk about that. Let's talk
Right.
about the pastor's kid that was raised in a super Southern Baptist home, and their dad doesn't embrace medication and
Mm,
therapy, and they're suicidal. I've seen Southern Baptist pastors lose their kids to suicide and then wonder what they did wrong. Let's talk about that.
wow.
And it's not to shame anybody or say that. Um, let's just talk about the misinformation and lack of education there, and let's move forward knowing that this is a conversation we need to have. we
Mm-hmm.
lost we lost way more people to suicide in the past year than we did COVID-19. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
The statistics are there, especially in the state of California, like where there's a huge population. A lot more people died of suicide. So
Wow.
and not to take away from COVID-19 or anything, but let's talk about the statistics behind suicide. And
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily in this interview, but just in general, let's really dive into that and really realize there's two pandemics going on here.
I
Let's
mean, I
talk
think
about,
there's been a
yeah,
lot of different kinds of pandemics going on.
hmm,
I think that
finances, jobs,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, this pandemic has shown us all the other pandemics we've been dealing with that we're not calling pandemics, but they
hmm,
are,
social issues. We
Yeah.
saw the whole George Floyd incident happen
Mm-hmm.
during a global pandemic, and people were out marching in the streets in their masks, and like
Mm-hmm.
people are hurting, they're alone, they're afraid.
Yeah.
They want comfort, they want healing, they want tragedy to step aside to where we can embrace these things that need to be addressed. So there's just so much more than
Yeah.
COVID-19 in this past year.
So you kind of mentioned medication.
Hmm.
Um, how did you approach that? Because I know, it's one thing to do like therapy, but medication is like a whole other thing. What was your mindset regarding that? And then how was that eventually dealt with, like with your family or with any
Hmm.
friends and stuff like that?
I would say, like, I'll start off with I went to my regular physician for mental health care, and I got a wrong diagnosis because I didn't go to a specialist on it and just was like,
Okay. Yeah.
he's like, you have generalizing anxiety disorder, which is what most physicians will tell you if you just go to
Mm-hmm.
your primary care physician. It's a great starting point, but let them recommend you to someone that actually knows what they're talking
Right.
about before they diagnose you with things. They were treating me for generalized anxiety disorder when I had panic disorder. I
Mm-hmm.
just have random panic attacks all the time, not necessarily thought
Right, right,
provoked
right.
or overthinking or anything like that. My body just goes haywire, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? I'm dying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so first and foremost, was on the wrong medication for a wrong diagnosis, drained me creatively, was not happy, made me more depressed. So
Mm-hmm.
go see, you can talk with your primary care physician, but go see a psychiatrist. I know there's a stigma around psychiatry and psychiatrists saying like,
Yeah.
oh, you're crazy if you get on meds. No, go make sure you're on the right medication, because medication can be the healing you've been looking for. Benny Hinn's not going to be able to
Yes.
slap you in the face every day and shun it away from you. Go to these evangelistic outreaches. I believe God can perform those miracles, but it's not going to be a and done for
Mm-hmm.
everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really dive into the psyche behind it and realize that God can
Exactly.
use therapy. God can also use medication. If you get a headache, you're going to
Yes.
take ibuprofen, correct? Yep. So if you're going to take the holistic approach on, you don't need that. You just need Jesus. Quit taking ibuprofen when you get a headache. Quit going to the doctor when you have the flu. Don't get a vaccine. Don't do all of the things that have, if you're going to make that argument, don't be a hypocrite,
Right.
live it out. Let's see how far you get with that.
Okay.
So mental health is health. Working
Yes.
out can help take it down, but also for the meatheads listening that stay in the gym all the time and are like, that's gonna heal you. You don't need medication. Shut up. Like, go shake your protein bottle and sit in a corner somewhere. That's not gonna work for everybody. So, and I'm not calling people out directly or anything like that. I can make some crazy imagery behind it because that's just who I am and like to play around. But it's a combination of things that could heal you.
Yeah.
So just be open to those things and try it out. And if it's more than one thing, great. If it's as simple as going to the gym and getting a quick workout and eating a healthier diet, more power to you. But don't
Mm-hmm.
say that that's the only thing that's going to heal somebody, because that's setting
Yeah.
false expectations and setting someone else to get upset when it
Right.
doesn't work and think something's wrong with them, and it just feeds into it.
That's something I'm very passionate about because I'm a social worker. This mental health field is what I do. And, as of course, being a Christian as well, hearing a lot of people into the church say,
Hmm.
Jesus will help you. Just pray. It's going to be fine. Like that's something that is yes, Jesus will help you. And also, I love the point that you made, which is Jesus made therapists and psychiatrists and doctors, and he gave us the intelligence to seek help when we need it and to be the helpers. And so we got to take advantage of that. And I think medication is the same thing. You're absolutely correct. When we take meds for other health issues, there's no questions
Hmm.
about that. But somehow there's questions about, um, psychiatric medication. It's just,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. So that's something I'm very passionate about as well. And, mental health is health, period.
Yeah.
I love that. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit to the faith thing because we talked a little bit about that. But what was the role that your faith played into this whole journey that you're going through? Because I know that, like, for myself personally, it's definitely been challenging because you go
Hmm.
through questioning God, like, why is this happening? And you go through a lot of like ups and downs, and sometimes this is something that can push people farther away. So what was that like for you?
Yeah. So really just diving into the fact that, like, when you're going through a mental health journey, you have to find that thing to cling on to, that hope. And for me, it was faith. And I knew
Mm-hmm.
that God was real at the time, but was I willing to put my trust that he would carry me through this and that there was a bigger purpose for the pain that I had been experiencing and the traumas and such. And when I really clinged on to my faith and realized, oh, like, I am going to get through this,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I really started to realize that God was all over it. This was a part of the process, and the pain, the
Yeah.
hurt and the trauma that I experienced was to help other people go through it as well. And do I think God did that to me to teach me that? No. I think that we have a choice through everything we experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we talk about medication and such and people opposing it, um, I know people that don't believe you need to get the oil change on your car routinely. So dumb. It's so dumb. And there are people that are like, you need to get the oil change on your car. It's not going to run right. Okay. You need to give your brain what it needs to run right. So
Right.
think of that antidepressant or the beta blocker, or whatever you're having to take for your mental health, as changing the oil in your car.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll run smoother. It'll run more efficiently. You're going to have less issues. It's not going to break down. All of the above. And
Mm-hmm.
faith and imagery and parables, and really just diving into my story and realizing who God's created me to be. It started there with like, oh, there is hope. There is a way that I'm going to get past this, and it's through Jesus alone. And once I embraced that, it's like all the stones started to line up for me to have a walking path in the rain. You know, you don't want to get your shoes
Yeah.
muddy. God provides those stepping stones for us. And it was a key factor in me overcoming and learning to overcome daily.
I love that. And I think that even just talking about, you doing this for yourself and your faith pushing you, but also so you that you can help somebody else, I think is the whole purpose of being a Christian in general. None of us are perfect. We all have something. If it's not like a mental health thing, it's something. And I think a big part of being a Christian is sharing your struggles to help others. And again, that's a big reason why I'm doing the podcast as well. And I love having conversations like this because I just know that this is going to help somebody.
Yeah.
So I love it. Okay. So in every episode, I always do a segment called What God Has Taught Me. Usually I do it over the course of like the past week or so. But since you're my guest, I'll let you decide however long the time frame you want to use it. Some maybe throughout this whole experience, or if you want to do in the past week, that's good too. What is something that God has taught you?
God's taught me so much. And one of the things, just right off the bat, is like when I'm in an interview and my throat's getting dry, to get some drink. So
You know what? That is a funny thing because I'm always here like, okay, how long can I talk until I get so thirsty?
yeah.
I need to take a break. And I'm like, does that look stupid if I just drink some juice or something in the middle? So I'm very glad that you said this.
Yeah, like I've come to the conclusion that there's a stigma with that.
There
And
is a stigma. We
we
need to get rid of
are,
it.
yeah, like for you, like you're the boss of this establishment here. This is your podcast. You make the rules. If you need a drink, you get a drink. But also as a guest and even a host on my show, I'm like, yeah, who cares if it's awkward? It'll save you from like later on. So
Exactly. I
I
love it. Let
stay
me take
hydrated.
let me take a drink too in
Yes.
solidarity.
Yeah. So like when it comes down to it, some of the things that God's been teaching me is it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to cry. Like it's like getting your wiper blades changed on your car. You know, like if you don't get them changed every now and again, it's going to be hard to get the rain off when it's raining and you can't see.
Right.
So just think of your emotions like that. If you have your wiper blades on and they're not working correctly, how are you going to see in the rain? You can't drive in the rain. So how are you going to be able to navigate these through these hardships in life if you're really emotional and you're just hiding it in,
Mm,
compressing it, and it'll end up blowing up. So mostly for the guys and even the girls,
yeah.
it's okay to cry, shed a few tears. Like it'll feel good for you. And you don't have to do it in public. Like it doesn't have to be like you're at somebody's funeral, but
Hmm.
just set aside some time to process and really dive into the psyche of the mind, and learning how to take care of yourself better, and take some time to meditate. And I'm not talking about like getting on a magic carpet like Aladdin and levitating with the fingers done like the okay sign, no. For me, like I like to just start my day getting quiet, maybe go for a walk outside if it's a nice day, get a tiny bit of exercise in just to get the blood flowing, like even if it's just bouncing around, anything like that. And just being quiet, shutting up, like
Hmm.
not being Trevor Talks for 10 seconds, and
Yeah.
just turning my brain off before I start checking emails or anything like that and starting my day. Take that time with God and meditate, listen to an audiobook, listen on the Bible app. Like they've got the audio version of the Bible. Just like take
Hmm.
some time for yourself and
Yeah.
start your day just taking care of your brain. Start in your days. Take some breaks in between. Um, I use the Calm app a lot, just
Oh, yes.
play the peaceful noises and the sounds and like white noise when I'm going to sleep, like just things to help my brain. And
Yeah.
yeah, just learning to maintenance your brain just as you would your car. You got to get the tires rotated and balanced, got to get the oil changed. Sometimes you got to get what's the running joke with people? Get the blinker fluid changed, like all of the above, like change the battery, keep it
All the
clean.
things.
Yeah, all the things. And you got to do the same with your mind and just taking care of your emotions and
Right.
stewarding the brain that God's given you on this earth.
What is it about, just going back to what you initially said about crying and just sharing emotions that was hard for you specifically until God taught you it was okay?
I grew up around three brothers, so
Mm,
being the artsy one, I've always been a tad bit more emotional. We'll say that.
yeah.
But being called a baby and other things that thou shalt not speaketh of,
Hmm.
things you get canceled for now. Not
I
even just
get.
brothers. Like just having there's a stigma with guys that you have to have it
Hmm.
together all the time. And for me, like found the wrong guy might refer to me as a feminine soul to a certain extent when it comes to
Mm,
emotions. But you learn to manage your emotions, and if you have anger issues, that is probably an underlying condition of that. If you have explosive anger, you're just trying to keep it together all the time. That's not how the brain needs to work. You need to,
right.
like, sometimes your computer overheats. You can let your brain overheat and do something real stupid one day, and then you're gonna think about, oh yeah, Trevor did warn me about that. And it might save you from having to go to some anger management classes or something. Just take care of your
Hmm.
brain and love your brain. You only get one. So
It's funny because I used to work with kids, I used to tell my younger kids, when a lot of times when we're angry, it's because we're sad, but being angry is easy. That, being sad is hard, being hurt and in pain is very vulnerable. And that's more difficult, for anyone. And I think it's funny that men, especially, they're very proud of the anger at times, but anger is also an emotion. So
mhm.
being angry can also mean that you're emotional because it is
Yeah.
an emotion. And it's just funny how, like, in our society, we've convinced ourselves that, crying is the equivalent of emotional, when anger and frustration and all of that kind of stuff is the exact same thing. And again, 99% of the time, all of that is because of something else, or
Mm.
is with the sadness and, the hurt and pain. So,
Yeah, and it takes a bigger person. Like if you feel
yes.
like you want to punch somebody in the mouth, it takes a bigger person to not do that. If you want to argue with somebody, it takes a bigger person to not engage in it. If you want to unleash fury on somebody, it takes the bigger person to not do it. So if you think you're big, bad, macho, have a rebel personality because you cuss everybody out, you know what? It's just showing insecurities, really. So
Precisely. It's
yeah,
funny because the very things that we do because we think it's going to produce a different result, it actually does the thing that we're trying to avoid
yeah.
a lot of the times. So, Trevor, you have started your own company, as you said, Transparent Media, and you also have a clothing line. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started Transparent Media Company this year to help authors, musicians, public figures, etc., to get their message out. So whether it's branding your product, a launch strategy, merchandising, all of the above, like more so the creative and the PR aspect for launching your um, like I said, whether it's a movie, book, music, any of that, that we're your one-stop shop for that, especially when it comes to the social media market. God's given us a really unique talent there. And
Yeah.
the clothing brand currently is Fear is a Liar, but um, I've currently taken the site down and just I'm working on a rebrand right now, which I'm
Okay.
super excited about. And we've got some amazing products coming. We'll still have the domain for fearsaliar.co. So even if it changes, that'll still go to the site. So
Okay.
I'm working on some really cool stuff and imagery to help people overcome the dark parts of the world. And but also, like, fear is a liar. I don't want it, like, fear to be in the name, because I don't like, what are we making famous here? So
Hmm.
like I want to advocate for change and healing. So focusing more so on the light and the darkness than the darkness itself.
Yeah.
So something that I've had on my heart for a while, and just God's given me such a vision for the next launch, and I can't wait to show it to everyone. But also, Trevor Talks podcast, like that's been the big game changer for me, and being able to have some bucket list people on recently and
Yeah.
be able to have conversations with people I've looked up to for almost more than a decade.
Yeah.
And God's just provided so much there. And I'm just baffled every single day at the opportunities, and hopefully having you come on the show and share your story and such. Like it's literally real people, real topics, and real stories, a combination of entertainment, inspiration, and conversation, just because like those are the things that I'm interested in. So it
Yeah.
started as just me having a form of not only a talk show, but it's therapy for me. Like having these
Yeah.
conversations is therapeutic. And it just kind of gained traction and became the hierarchy of like what I do. It used to be like
Mm-hmm.
blogging and guest articles on bigger publications, and now like it's straight to consumer podcasting. And God's just blown my mind with it and given me a brand that I could stand behind. I'm super proud of what we've done at Trevor Talks, and I can't wait to
Yeah.
see where it grows to. And even being able to have this conversation wouldn't be possible if I wouldn't have said yes to the crazy vision God gave me, even though I thought like, oh, it might be embarrassing. And then now I'm like, you know what, I can't imagine doing anything else. So all
Yeah.
that to say, chase your yes, whatever God has for you. If it's a something that keeps coming into your mind, maybe that's a hint that you should probably just give it a
Yes.
shot. Just give it a shot, baby steps at a time. Just write it down, give yourself some goals, and go after it.
What was your inspiration for Trevor Talks?
My name is Trevor, and I love to talk. I run my mouth 110% of the time. I'm really energetic. I've always enjoyed emceeing concerts and like
Mhm.
being the person that comes on before the band to introduce the band, and in between,
Yeah.
like being able to share my story in little increments. But I've always been fascinated by other people's stories and amplifying
Mm-hmm.
other people's voices. So it started with me, like from the Trevor Talks, like blog and video stuff on Facebook. I was able to interview on red carpet for some movie premieres and then some award shows. And I was like, oh, like I really like interviewing people. I like
Yeah.
hearing their stories and conversation. And it's easy for me to just sit back and be like in awe of what God's doing in their life and ask questions that indirectly, like I ask them because I'm curious, but it's actually
Mm-hmm.
healing for people to sit and listen to it, it turns
Yeah.
out. So being able to use that for God's glory and be able to show people that they're not alone in their seasons of doubt and anxiety and depression and thoughtlessness. And even though they've struggled with things in the past, it doesn't mean they're too far gone. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
whole message behind it. Like my name is Trevor. I love to talk. I don't shut up. And God's given me a unique perspective to ask people questions and be able to carry on a conversation. And like I still get insecure. Like I had Dave Ramsey's daughter, Rachel Cruz, is two-time number one New York
Wow.
Times best-selling author. Dr. Caroline Leaf, who's a world-renowned cognitive neuroscientist.
Wow.
All of the like Grammy-nominated artists, Grammy winners, and all of these people that have these what seems like an elevated platform. All of our
Yeah.
stories are unique and valid. No one's story is more important than ours. But you have these people on, and it's like God gave you a talent to keep a world-renowned cognitive neuroscientist talking for over an hour. And
Wow.
all of these people, and they're interested in the conversation. You can see in their
Yeah.
reactions, and maybe they're putting on a front. But that's something that God provided me, and I had to realize it's not arrogant to be confident in what God's called you to do.
Yes.
And one of my clients is a bigger musician, and I was showing him like I was out promoting his movie last year when the pandemic hit, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, like I like to think I'm pretty good at like keeping a crowd content in between acts. He's like, whoa, it's okay to know that you're good at something. It's
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
So
I love
he
that.
checked me in that instance, and I was like, dang, like we're so quick to ensure people that they're great at something, but when it comes to
Mm.
ourselves, we're like, I don't want to be cocky, I don't want to be this, I don't want to be that. But at the end of the day, when you start writing stuff down, you start to believe it. So if you're like, oh, I'm okay at it, you're going to think you're okay at it, and you're not going to perform at the performance level that you could be doing it. What makes you
Yes.
think you're going to be a New York Times bestselling author if you don't actually believe you can do it? So
Yeah.
all of that, like that's what Trevor Talks is about. I'm gonna ask the hard questions, I'm gonna ask the good questions, I'm gonna ask whatever God lays on my heart. And it's genuinely like me coming from a place of curiosity and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully humor. I love making stupid jokes. And sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. But you know what? I'm gonna keep rolling with them. And it's just, again, conversation, inspiration, education, but genuine curiosity in people's lives,
Yeah.
and amplifying their voices, sharing their stories to help other people make it through those hard times as well.
I love that. Everybody, go ahead, check out Trevor Talks podcast. It's really good. I listened to a couple episodes and I love it. I mean, I'm a podcast person, so I love listening to people talk about things, but I think it's so great when you can have conversations about things that we're not having conversations about. So I really love that. All right, we're coming to a close, Trevor. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking to me. I'm going to give you the floor real quick to just promote yourself, plug yourself, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, on all social media platforms is at Trevor Talks and at Trevor Talks Podcast. And wherever you stream your podcasts, including YouTube, we've got episodes up there. All you have to do is search Trevor Talks and you'll see this face on there. And most likely making like a really, really unique, interesting, what I think is funny face, but probably over the extreme. But just Google Trevor Talks wherever, and you'll be able to find it.
Thank you so much, Trevor. This was amazing. I can't wait for everybody to hear it. Thank you again for joining me. Until next time, everybody. Bye.